If you'd told me a year ago that I'd catch my wife sneaking around with another man in the park right behind our house, I would have laughed it off. Claire and I had been together for 12 years, married for 8. We had a mortgage, 2 golden retrievers, and matching lawn chairs with our initials stitched on them. We were the model couple in our sleepy little neighborhood in Willow Creek. People used to joke that we should give marriage counseling seminars. "What's your secret?" they'd ask. Claire would just laugh and say, "Patience and good wine." You know that saying, "It doesn't happen to people like us"? Turns out, it happens exactly to people like us. And it happens in the most ordinary ways. No grand drama. No slam doors. Just cracks you don't notice until the whole foundation's rotted through. It all started on a Saturday morning. The kind where you wake up to birds chirping and the smell of fresh-cut grass. The kind of morning where you think nothing bad could possibly happen. Claire said she wanted to get some air, clear her head, maybe walk the dogs. Totally normal. Except, she left the dogs behind. I remember the way she tied her shoes that morning, quick and distracted, like she was running late for something. She grabbed her phone, checked it, smiled a little too wide at something on the screen, and then told me she'd be back soon. I was under the hood of my Mustang, grease up to my elbows, and just mumbled, "Have fun." Now, I'm not the jealous type. Never have been. Claire had her hobbies. I had mine. She loved long walks and podcasts. I loved fixing up my '68 Mustang. It worked. We gave each other space. Some couples suffocate each other. We'd always prided ourselves on not being that couple. But that morning, something gnawed at me. Call it intuition. Call it too much bad coffee. Maybe it was the way she didn't kiss me goodbye. Maybe it was the weird energy in the air. Whatever it was, I decided to take a little walk of my own. The park behind our house wasn't anything fancy. A few benches, a winding path, a half-dead oak tree kids loved to climb. Some graffiti on the picnic tables. The smell of fresh mulch. It was the kind of place where you knew everyone by name, and strangers stuck out like sore thumbs. We'd taken a million walks there together, hand in hand, back when we still did things like that. I cut through the backyard and slipped into the trail. I didn't really have a plan. I wasn't looking to catch her doing anything. Honestly, I thought I was being paranoid. I told myself I'd just do a quick loop, stretch my legs, maybe wave at her if I passed her on the trail. Until I saw her. Claire. Standing by the old swing set. Laughing. Twisting her hair around her finger like she used to do when we first started dating. That nervous, flirty little move she didn't even realize she did. And she wasn't alone. There was a man standing way too close. Tall, athletic, with that casual, "I'm just here for the vibes" look. He was wearing a fitted baseball cap, gray joggers, a Henley shirt that somehow managed to look both casual and calculated. I didn't recognize him. And that's saying something, considering I knew every dog walker and jogger in Willow Creek. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a coworker. Maybe a cousin I forgot about. Maybe I was the crazy one. But then I saw her hand, resting on his chest. Just a moment. Maybe 2 seconds, tops. But it was enough to knock the wind out of me. Enough to burn the image into my brain forever. I ducked behind a tree, heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. What the hell was I supposed to do? March up to them? Snap a photo like some private investigator? Shout "gotcha" like some bad reality TV show? Instead, I stood there, frozen, watching. They talked for a few more minutes, standing way too close, laughing like teenagers on a first date. Claire tucked her hair behind her ear. He leaned in just a little too much when he said something that made her laugh. Then they hugged. The kind of hug you don't give a friend. The kind where you linger, press a little harder, breathe a little deeper. His hand slid down her back in a way that made my stomach twist. Then they walked off together down the trail, arms brushing, heads leaning just a little too close. I stayed behind that tree for what felt like hours, even after they disappeared from sight. My breathing slowed down, but my mind was racing a mile a minute. Did this mean what I thought it meant? Was this the first time? Had there been others? Was this some harmless flirtation that got out of hand? Or had the line been crossed a long time ago, and I'd just been too blind to see it? I wanted to believe it was innocent. God, I wanted to. I wanted to be the idiot husband everyone laughs at behind his back. I wanted it to be nothing. But deep down, I knew. I knew everything had just changed. There was no unseeing what I'd seen. No going back to the way things were. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like a stranger in my own life. The funny thing about betrayal is that it doesn't hit you all at once. It leaks into your mind slow and steady, like a drip you can't fix, filling every quiet moment with suspicion. After what I saw in the park, I didn't confront Claire. I didn't shout, didn't demand answers. Honestly, I didn't even know what I would have said. Hey, why were you petting some guy in front of the swing set like a high school sophomore? No, I kept it bottled up. I went back to the garage, wiped my hands on an old rag, and tried to dive back into the Mustang's carburetor. But I couldn't focus. Every time I looked at a wrench, I saw her hand on his chest. Every time the engine coughed, I heard her laugh. Even the familiar smell of motor oil couldn't drown out the questions swirling in my head. When Claire came home an hour later, her cheeks were flushed, and she smelled faintly of cheap body spray, the kind I knew she didn't wear. Not hers. His. Hey, babe, she said, tossing her keys into the bowl by the door like nothing had happened. You hungry? I was thinking we could order pizza. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and shake her and force the truth out of her. Instead, I smiled. Yeah, pizza sounds good. And just like that, we slid back into our normal routine. Only it wasn't normal anymore. It was a performance, and I was suddenly painfully aware that I was the only one who knew it was all fake. At dinner, I noticed her picking at her food, checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, smiling at a text she didn't share with me, laughing quietly to herself in a way she hadn't done around me in months. That night, lying next to her in bed, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazily above us. She was already asleep, breathing slow and steady, like she didn't have a care in the world. Meanwhile, my brain wouldn't shut off. What was his name? How did they meet? Was this a one-time thing? Was he better looking than me? Younger? Stronger? Was he someone from town? Someone I might even know? The paranoia grew. Every small interaction twisted into something suspicious. The quick, running out for groceries trips that lasted way too long. The sudden work events she'd never mentioned before. Even the way she dressed changed, a little more makeup, a little more perfume, even when she claimed she was just going for a walk. My mind went down dark alleys I didn't even know existed. The next morning, I told myself I needed proof. Solid proof. Something undeniable. Because if I was going to blow up our life, I needed to be sure. And deep down, some part of me still hoped, still begged, that maybe, just maybe, I'd find nothing. So I started watching. Not in a creepy way. Not at first. I just paid more attention. Her phone, always face down now. Text she'd answer later. New clothes she didn't bother to show me. A gym membership she suddenly cared about, even though she hated working out. And the walks. Always the walks. Always, just need to clear my head. Always alone. Once, I offered to come with her. She hesitated, just a flicker, barely a second, but I saw it. I really just need some me time, she said, forcing a smile. You understand, right? Of course, I lied. I started noticing other things too. Receipts from a coffee shop she'd never mentioned before. Charges to places that weren't exactly in the walking distance she claimed. A second phone charger mysteriously appearing in her car. It wasn't just what she did. It was what she didn't do. She stopped asking about my day. Stopped caring about my projects. Conversations became shorter. Her hugs became mechanical. After a week of this, I cracked. I needed to know. The next Saturday, when she left to clear her head, I waited exactly 5 minutes, then followed. It felt wrong. It felt dirty. But it felt necessary. I stayed far enough back that she wouldn't see me. She took the familiar trail through the park, phone clutched in her hand, glancing around like she was expecting someone. And sure enough, he showed up. Same guy. Same baseball cap. Same casual swagger. This time, there was no pretending. No friendly hug. No accidental touches. He kissed her. Right there by the dead oak tree where we used to sit and feed the ducks. Not a peck. A real kiss. The kind of kiss you save for someone you miss, someone you ache for. I turned and walked away before they could see me. I don't know how I made it home. I don't even remember unlocking the back door. All I know is I sat down on the kitchen floor and stayed there for a long time, staring at nothing, listening to the clock tick away the last seconds of my old life. The longer I sat there, the more the doubts piled up. Was I the only fool who didn't see it? Did our friends know? Did our neighbors? Had I been the punchline to some cosmic joke? I thought betrayal would feel like an explosion, but it didn't. It felt like a slow, steady leak. And I was already drowning. I wish I could tell you that after that night, I pulled myself together, that I confronted her like a man, demanded the truth, and set everything straight. But that's not what happened. The truth is, I became a ghost in my own life, floating through the days, smiling when I needed to, nodding at the right moments, keeping up appearances. I played my part well. But under the surface, something inside me was changing. I started keeping a journal. Nothing fancy. Just an old notebook I found buried in the garage. Every day, I jot down notes. Things she said. Places she went. Little inconsistencies that would have meant nothing before but now screamed for attention. Like the Tuesday she said she was working late, but came home without her usual work bag. Or the Thursday she claimed to have a girls' night, but came back wearing a different perfume, one I'd never smelled before. It wasn't just the big things. It was the small ones. The way she'd start humming under her breath when texting. The way she'd delete entire conversation threads instead of letting them pile up like she used to. Even the dogs started acting weird around her, barking when she came home late, sniffing her clothes more than usual. Maybe it sounds crazy. Maybe it was. But once you know the cracks are there, you see them everywhere. I started asking casual questions, too. Little tests. How was your walk? I'd ask. Good. She'd say too quickly, not meeting my eyes. Did you run into anyone? No, not really. Lies. Smooth, practiced lies. But they left a bitter taste in her mouth, and I can see it if I looked close enough. One night, while she showered, I went through her phone. I know. It's a violation. It's wrong. But by then, so much had already been violated that it felt almost justified. I found nothing. No texts. No calls. No photos. It was too clean. Too clean. Which meant she was either using another phone, or she was smarter about covering her tracks than I ever gave her credit for. And that scared me more than anything else. I started taking walks myself, following the same path she did, sitting on the same benches, watching the same swings sway in the wind, hoping to see them, hoping, maybe, to catch a glimpse of the life she was living without me. And after 3 evenings of nothing but empty trails and stray cats, I finally saw them again. They were farther down the path this time, closer to the creek where the old bridge crossed over. She was leaning against the railing, laughing. He was standing next to her, arms draped casually over the top rail, leaning in. It looked so natural, so easy, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. And for a second, just a second, I hated her. Not because she cheated, not even because she lied, but because she made it look easy. Like walking away from me was the most natural thing in the world. I snapped a picture, not for revenge, not to post online, just to have it. Proof. A piece of the truth I could hold in my hand. When I got home that night, I poured myself a whiskey, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at the photo. Claire. And him. 2 people who didn't have a care in the world. While I was crumbling, I knew I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. That's when the idea hit me. I needed a professional. I reached out to Rob, a buddy from my college days. Rob was one of those guys who knew a guy for everything. Sure enough, he had a number for a private investigator, best in the county, he said. I called the number the next day. A gruff voice answered. His name was Pete Harland. Former cop turned PI. No-nonsense type. After a brief chat, we agreed to meet the next morning at a diner off Main Street. Pete was exactly what you'd expect. Worn leather jacket, coffee-stained fingers, and eyes that looked like they missed nothing. I slid the photo across the table. She's meeting him at the park, I said quietly. I need to know who he is. How long this has been going on. Everything. Pete didn't ask a lot of questions. He just nodded, scribbled notes on a battered notepad, and told me he'd start right away. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of relief. Like maybe, just maybe, the truth wasn't completely out of reach. Over the next few days, Pete sent me updates. Grainy photos from a distance. Claire and the guy, sometimes at the park, sometimes grabbing coffee from a little place 2 towns over. Once, at a motel just off the highway. That one hit the hardest. Seeing her walking out of that place, laughing, tossing her hair like a teenager sneaking out of detention. Pete was thorough. License plates. Schedules. Names. The guy's name was Jason Hartwell. Divorced, no kids. Lived about 15 miles away. Worked construction. Charming in that scruffy, just rough enough way. And according to Pete, Claire and Jason had been meeting up for at least 3 months. 3 months. 3 months of smiling at me across the dinner table while slipping out the back door. 3 months of lying about book club meetings and late nights at work. 3 months of building a second life while I was busy trying to fix the carburetor on an old Mustang. I sat at the kitchen table again, the new photos spread out in front of me like a twisted deck of cards. Claire. Jason. Claire again. Each image a little dagger, carving away at whatever pieces of trust one had left. I knew I had to do something. But first, I needed to see it for myself. Not from Pete's lens. Not from a distance. I needed to look it straight in the face. It was just after 8 p.m. when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Pete's name lit up the screen. "You need to come now," he said. His voice was low, serious. "They're at the park. Backside, near the big oak." My heart started hammering before I even grabbed my jacket. The sun was just dipping below the horizon, the sky bleeding orange into deep purple. The park was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears. Every step I took down that dirt path felt heavier than the last. Pete was standing by the old maintenance shed, partially hidden by a row of untrimmed hedges. He motioned me over without a word, handed me a small pair of binoculars, and pointed toward the clearing near the oak tree. There they were, Claire and Jason. At first, it looked innocent. They were standing close, talking, laughing. Jason reached out and tucked a strand of Claire's hair behind her ear. She giggled and swatted at his hand playfully. Then it changed. He pulled her closer. Their bodies pressed together in a way that left no room for doubt. She rested her hands on his chest, tilting her head up toward him. They kissed, slow, unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. But it didn't stop there. Jason pressed her back gently against the trunk of the oak tree. She let him. She wanted him to. Their bodies moved together in a rhythm that spoke louder than words. His hands roamed her sides, her waist, her back. He pulled her shirt up just a little, just enough to feel skin. Claire's fingers tangled in his hair as she leaned into him, arching slightly, seeking more contact. There, in the fading light, under the same tree where we used to sit with picnic baskets and wine coolers, she was giving herself to someone else. Not just physically, emotionally, completely. I stood there, frozen, the binoculars glued to my face, my heart breaking one slow crack at a time. Pete stayed silent beside me. He didn't have to say anything. There was nothing to say. Jason slid his hand along her waist and down to the small of her back, pulling her even closer. Claire responded with a soft sigh I could almost hear from where I stood. She pressed her forehead against his, whispering something that made him chuckle low in his throat. They stayed like that for what felt like forever, oblivious to the world around them. Oblivious to me. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the binoculars. I don't know how long I stood there, watching the scene unfold like a slow-motion car crash. Long enough to know that this wasn't a fling. This wasn't some drunken mistake or some reckless moment she'd regret later. This was something she wanted. Something she'd chosen. They eventually pulled apart, laughing again, touching each other with the kind of ease that only comes from familiarity. Jason said something and Claire nodded, smiling wide, the kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. Then they walked off down the trail, hand in hand, disappearing into the shadows. I stayed rooted to the spot, staring at the empty clearing. Pete finally spoke, his voice rough. "I'm sorry, man." I couldn't answer. My throat felt too tight, my chest too heavy. Instead, I handed the binoculars back to him, shoved my hands into my jacket pockets, and started the long, slow walk home. Every step felt heavier than the last. The air was cool, but I barely felt it. All I could think about was that image burned into my mind. Claire, pressed against that old oak tree, lost in someone else's arms. The park had always been our place. Our quiet escape from the world. Now, it was just another piece of wreckage in the disaster my life had become. I didn't cry. Not then. I didn't scream or punch walls like you see in the movies. I just walked. And with every step, I felt the part of me that still believed in us dying a little more. By the time I reached our backyard, night had fallen completely. The porch light was on. The house looked the same as it always had, warm, inviting, safe. But it wasn't. Not anymore. The next few days passed in a fog. I barely ate. I barely slept. Every time Claire smiled at me, every time she asked me how my day was, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I had to act normal. I had to play my part. Otherwise, they'd get suspicious. And I couldn't afford that. Not yet. Then, 3 days after what I'd seen at the oak tree, Pete called again. "We need to talk," he said. In person. We met at the same diner, the same worn-out booth by the window. Pete looked different this time, more tense, more serious. He slid a manila envelope across the table. "I kept digging like you asked," he said. "Turns out, this guy Jason, he's not just after your wife." I opened the envelope and started flipping through the photos and documents inside. Statements. Bank account numbers I didn't recognize. Copies of transfer requests. "He's after your money too." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Claire's been helping him," Pete said grimly. "Bank records. Text messages. Copies of emails. She's been giving him information. Your savings, your investments, even your retirement accounts. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. They're planning to wipe you out, Pete continued. Empty the accounts, disappear together. New state, new life. Probably under fake names. I sat back in the booth, the blood roaring in my ears. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was theft. It was premeditated destruction. They weren't just leaving me. They were planning to leave me with nothing. You said you wanted proof, Pete said. Well, here it is. There were notes on conversations between Claire and Jason, plans to drain my 401k after a fake investment opportunity Claire had floated, plans to list the house for a quick cash sale the moment I signed divorce papers, a timeline for getting out of town. They even talked about how to manipulate you into agreeing to it all, Pete added, his face hard. Jason said, and I quote, "He's too soft to fight back if we do it right." That did it. That flipped the switch inside me that wasn't going to flip back. I stared down at the evidence, feeling something cold and hard settle into my chest. The old me might have broken down right there. But the man sitting in that booth now wasn't the same. I want to destroy them, I said quietly. Pete gave a small, grim smile. Thought you might. We ordered 2 more coffees, and over the next few hours, we hatched a plan. Simple. Devastating. We'd let them think they were winning. We'd let them think they were pulling one over on me. I would play the part of the clueless husband just a little longer. I would pretend to be distracted, busy, trusting. And when the moment was right, we'd pull the rug out from under them in front of everyone they cared about. Claire had already planned a small celebration for our anniversary coming up. Family, close friends, a few neighbors. She said she wanted it to be low-key and sweet. Perfect. They're going to think it's the start of their new life, Pete said. But it'll be the end. I would make a speech, like any loving husband would. I'd talk about love, trust, partnership. I'd thank her for being the love of my life. And then I'd flip the script. I'd show the emails, the bank records, the photos, everything, every betrayal, every lie, projected on a screen for everyone to see. Family, friends, neighbors, everyone who ever thought Claire was the perfect wife. I would destroy the fantasy she'd built. And when the dust settled, she'd have nothing left but the wreckage she created. She wanted a new life? She was about to get it. But not the one she planned. Not by a long shot. As Pete and I finalized the details, a strange feeling washed over me. Not anger. Not sadness. Relief. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was about to take my life back. On my terms. In the days leading up to the celebration, I became an actor playing the role of my life. I was attentive, loving, supportive, the husband Claire probably thought she had completely fooled. Every smile I gave her was rehearsed. Every kiss on the cheek was calculated. Every "I love you" was laced with the bitter taste of betrayal I kept buried deep. Meanwhile, Pete and I worked behind the scenes. We rented a projector and a screen, claiming it was for a fun slideshow of memories for the guests. Claire loved the idea. She even suggested digging out old photos and videos. Everyone will cry, she said, beaming. It'll be perfect. Oh, it would be perfect, all right. Just not in the way she imagined. I spent hours carefully compiling the evidence. Photos of Claire and Jason. Screenshots of the bank transactions. Copies of the fake investment emails. Text messages where they plotted to drain me dry. Pete helped me polish it all into a neat, chronological timeline. When the night came, there would be no room for doubt. No gaslighting. No, you misunderstood. Or, it's not what it looks like. It would be brutal. Final. Unforgiving. Exactly what they deserved. The day of the party, the house was buzzing. Claire was in her element, setting out food trays, lighting candles, making sure the music playlist was just right. You're going to love it, she said, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Thank you for trusting me to handle everything. I just smiled and told her she was amazing. Guests started arriving around 6. Family, friends, neighbors who'd known us for years. Everyone laughing, chatting, toasting to love and commitment, words that felt like poison in my ears. Jason showed up about an hour later, dressed casually, blending into the crowd with a drink in hand and that easygoing charm Claire must have fallen for. I watched him from across the room, wondering how he could stand there smiling while plotting to ruin someone's life. But that was about to end. At 8:30, Claire called for everyone's attention. Before we eat, she said, Aaron put together something special for us. A little walk down memory lane. I stepped up to the front of the room, holding a glass of champagne. First, I said, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Claire and I have been through so much together. Claire stood off to the side, beaming. We've built a life full of love, trust, and partnership, I continued. Or at least, that's what I thought. There was a murmur through the crowd. Claire's smile faltered, just a little. I turned to the laptop connected to the projector. Hit play. The first images flashed on the screen. Claire and Jason at the park. Then the hotel footage. Then the screenshots of texts discussing draining my accounts. Then the fake investment emails. One after another. Claire's face drained of color. Jason looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. The room went dead silent. Every eye turned toward Claire. Murmurs started. Gasps. Someone dropped a glass. Claire stepped forward, trembling. Aaron, please. I held up a hand. Save it. The final image froze on the screen. A side-by-side of our wedding day photo and a photo of her kissing Jason at the park. The contrast couldn't have been more brutal. You wanted a new life, I said, my voice steady. Well, congratulations. You just got it. I turned, walked to the door, and without another word, left the house and the life we had built, burning behind me. Claire could have Jason. She could have the humiliation, the whispers, the looks from our friends and family. She could have it all. I didn't need any of it anymore. Because I was free. The days after the celebration were a whirlwind. Word spread like wildfire. The town may have been small, but its appetite for gossip was massive. Everywhere Claire went, she was met with stares, whispers, and barely concealed judgment. She tried to call me. She texted, emailed, even showed up at my work once, but security turned her away. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I'd already said everything that needed saying. Instead, I had my lawyer send her papers. Divorce papers, ironclad and merciless. The terms were simple. She got nothing. No house. No savings. No alimony. Just the clothes on her back. The evidence Pete and I had gathered was overwhelming. If she fought, she'd lose even harder. She'd risk fraud charges, maybe even jail time. So, backed into a corner, Claire folded. We met in a sterile conference room at my lawyer's office. She sat across from me, hollow-eyed, clutching a pen with trembling fingers. Is there really no other way? She whispered. I looked her dead in the eye. You made your choice. She signed. Just like that, everything she had schemed for vanished. Meanwhile, Jason wasn't faring any better. A few days after the papers were signed, he showed up outside my house. It was late. The street was dark. I almost didn't open the door when I saw him standing there, looking more like a kick dog than the cocky charmer from the party. Aaron, please, he said, his voice shaking. You don't have to go to the cops. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Give me one reason why I shouldn't. He fumbled for words. I made a mistake. Claire said you wouldn't fight it. She said you were soft. I let the silence stretch. I'll leave town, he stammered. I'll disappear. You won't hear from me again. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, you're lucky I want you gone more than I want you in jail. His shoulders sagged with relief. But if you ever come near me again, I added, or if I even hear your name, I won't hesitate. One phone call, and you'll be explaining yourself to a judge. He nodded quickly, backing away like a man who knew he'd just dodged a bullet. I closed the door without another word. Standing there in the quiet of my house, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Claire and Jason thought they were building a new life. Instead, they destroyed their own. And I was finally free to start living mine.